Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. We are on episode 200, and I have been waiting to ask this gentleman to come on because I knew I needed a big number to have Ken Wallace on, and he is the superintendent of one of the most innovative, if not the most innovative districts here in the United States, Maine Township High School District 207. He's also the founder of the Chicago Coaching Center. And guess what? Google was the first to work with his district in a K through 12 partnership. Ken Wallace, thank you so much for joining me on this epic journey, number 200.
All right, Peter, man, it's an honor to be here. Episode 200.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, so right now, tell us a little bit more about yourself. There's so many more. There's awards in there. There's all different kinds of things. But as a superintendent, as a human being, who are you and what are you doing and what's your role right now?
That's a big question. So I just, I got to say, I've been on this really amazing journey. I just turned 60 a couple of weeks ago. And if you'd told me 20 years ago I'd be here as a superintendent at Maine Township High School District 207, I'd ask, how in the world did that happen? So it's been kind of an organic journey. Different things have happened in my life that have forced to turn this way or that way. I never actually had on my bucket list to be a superintendent. I love teaching. I love coaching. Education in its purest form is really trying to create better learning conditions for humans. And I really applied that as a classroom teacher and as a coach, and just love the journey to maximize human potential. But one thing led to another. I got into leadership and was fortunate enough 17 years ago to come to Maine Township. I was actually working on my dissertation. I studied learning, actually reading, writing, speaking, listening, performance differences between males and females, which is what got me into neuroscience. So I've been super fascinated with that. I used to attend a lot of the learning and brain conferences out in Boston at Harvard and MIT and follow a lot of neuroscientists. So I've just been totally always fascinated with how humans learn. When I came to Maine, I was the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction. Still probably the most fun job I've ever had, most rewarding job. But after working for a couple of superintendents and seeing the potential of what Maine could be, we'd already partnered with Google, in the K-12 space, but I really was interested in trying to see what was possible in the adult learning space. And I wasn't sure that the next superintendent I'd work with would really have the commitment to try to do it. So I rolled the dice, applied for the job, got lucky. I'm the first superintendent ever hired from within Maine. And then we set out to really try to coach everybody. And we're finishing our 8th year of coaching everybody. That's probably been the most transformative thing I would say that we've done, because what it really set in motion is a practice that helped drive the culture of continuous learning and create a real learning community. So we can do things now that we couldn't have dreamed of doing 10 years ago, because I think we've really set in motion this idea of a culture of learning for adults. So I'm a simple old country boy from Indiana. One of your questions, I think, is some of the things I've done in the past. I just have been fascinated about learning stuff personally. I used to run roofing crews. I've worked construction. I've worked on in agriculture space. I've did singing telegrams in a gorilla costume. So I have a long list of crazy stuff I've done. And you know what? I'm hoping to still do a lot of crazy stuff in this universe. I've still got some time in it.
I love it. Happy belated 60th. You don't look a day over 50, my friend. That's it. That's where I'm at. So I'm about 10 years behind you. So yeah, we are both Indiana kin, actually. We're both from Indiana. I think awesome people just come from Indiana. I'm just a little biased. But let's dig into your own educational journey. Even, before you were roofing and singing in gorilla costumes and such. Usually what I find with a lot of my my interviews are that there's something there that made you more curious about, neuroscience and learning how to learn and such in your journey. Take us through what kind of student Ken was, and maybe some of those highlights that kind of tipped you off into, where you are now in your push to change education for the better.
I was mostly a pain in the ass student because I was highly bored. And, I didn't have a lot of great teachers, frankly, growing up. I had some influential teachers, but I had a couple that stood out in terms of what I always tested well. So I got by because I tested well, and school was really boring for me. So I have a lot of sympathy for those knuckleheads out there. I've always had an affinity for knuckleheads, male and female knuckleheads, because I was pretty much a knucklehead myself. And, so I've always seen the world a little bit different. I've always been the kid who asked questions and challenged things. And so I respect people that do that. But the first most impactful teacher in my life was a guy named Gary Catt. I went to high school. I went to a Catholic grade school where there's a lot of crime and punishment involved with Catholic grade school. And I, being a junior criminal in Catholic grade school, I suffered a lot of punishment. So I learned how to be fast and shifty then to run away from the nuns. But I went to the public high school as a ninth grader. And a few weeks in school, my freshman algebra teacher was a guy named Gary Catt. And 2-3 weeks into school, now this is 1975, so think lime, polyester, bell-bottom suit with a jacket. Okay, you got to go back to this. The Led Zeppelin was big. Peter Frampton was about to come alive, and we were growing our hair and having a good time. So it was a good time to be a kid in high school. Anyway, 2-3 weeks into high school, Gary Catt, we'd been studying something. For the life of me, I don't remember what it was, but we were studying something that we took an assessment on. And as an entire class, we didn't do very well. And Gary stood up in front of the class, and he, just an awesome dude, very patient, very thoughtful, just one of the smartest guys I ever met. But he looked at the class and he said, I didn't do a good enough job of preparing you for this material. It was the first time in my life I'd ever heard a teacher say anything like that. And I know that at that time, I was 14 or 15. So who talks to their parents when they're 14 or 15? So I never went home and talked to my parents. I didn't talk to my friends about it. I don't think I talked to anybody about it, but I never forgot that because it was such a rare occurrence in my experience that someone would actually say that. And that was really the first time I witnessed actual teaching humility in a way that really struck me. Later, in college, I had another professor named Tom Rivers. And Tom was the first guy to value questions more than answers. And it was the first time I was kind of thrown for a loop because it just, flipped the script on learning, where it was like, okay, here's the stuff I want you to remember, boring stuff, study, regurgitate, rinse and repeat. And instead, he was all about constructivism and constructing questions. And it was a little frustrating at first because it was so rare, but it really, really changed my thinking dramatically. And it's probably one of the significant things that helped me become a better writing teacher early in my career, when I didn't have a lot of guidance. I didn't have mentoring. I didn't have coaching. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about adult learning is my own journey was just devoid of it. I had to figure a lot of stuff out for myself. I could have used some mentors. I could have used coaching. I could have used some really smart people guiding me because I wanted to be not just good, I wanted to be great at my craft. And I had to figure a lot of stuff out, but I was fortunate enough to have a couple of people. One, Gary modeled the humility of being a learner that I've never forgotten. I think that's implicit in anyone's personal learning journey, and it's certainly implicit in a professional learning community. If you want to build one, you've got to really promote and practice self-reflection and humility, and we've tried to build that into certainly our coaching model. But as a writing teacher, having the journey in my classroom be about the questioning and heuristics and constructivism, it helped me be a better teacher, because I reached for that early on when I was trying to figure it out and correct some of my mistakes. Where today, one of our newest coaching path at District 207 is we actually take student teachers and we coach them while they're in student teaching. So all the mistakes that every rookie makes, we coach in the moment to try to help people be prepared to come out. So anyway, as a student, I got married young and had kids young. And I was working 3 or 4 jobs, one of which was the singing telegram and the gorilla suit gig. That was part-time, but the hourly wage on that was actually stellar. I just didn't have enough work, to keep me gainfully employed. In rural Indiana, I guess there just aren't enough gorilla gigs out there to do that. So I had to work on hog farms and roof houses and, stuff like that. But I was just trying to figure it out. But when I got married young, had kids young, working 3 or 4 jobs, and I never made better grades in my life than then. So it just was, I got by with, B's when I could have probably been a straight A student, and I got by. I really wish I'd had better role models. If I could go back and say, okay, what would you change? But all in all, I continued and have tried to continue to learn and get better, and then just be really passionate and focused about I'm a systems thinker, so how to create these systems where, it's a great school isn't just having a great teacher in that classroom and that classroom and that classroom over there. A great school is about having a great teacher in every classroom and having some really high impact strategies and having that at scale and having these learning experiences at scale. So I have always tried to think about a systems way to approach the work.
What are some of the things that you've brought to Maine Township that you're proud of, including, you've already mentioned the student teacher teaching. Man, I could have used that. I can guarantee you 20 years ago when I started, you are on your own. And if you have that family around you, you would get a better picture of it. Mine was just check the box, get over in the corner. But beyond that, what are some of the other interesting programs you've done and or experimented with in creating a newer way of systems and helping more and more students and educators just move forward as human beings?
So the thing I'm most passionate about right now is actually the individual career planning that we're doing for students. We're doing it at scale in a way that I haven't seen it anywhere else. We've got a lot of people that come and look at our model. Most models are the traditional where, okay, we take the college-bound kids, we put them over on this track, and we think bulletproof, they can't fail. Not true, never been true. And then we take the career and tech ed kids, and those are considered the career kids. Well, last time I checked, people sending their kids to college expect and hope that they would have a career. But the truth is, we got more young kids living in their parents' basement now than at any time in modern history. We got more kids buried in debt. 1 out of 2 college graduates is underemployed, and those are the kids that actually graduate. What about the kid that goes for 2 or 3 years or 7 years and never gets a diploma? So we've got to really work on that. I really got passionate about this 10 years ago, just paying attention to the job market and realizing what a mismatch that we've had in terms of how we've built schools, where we've just treated, we treated success post high school as if there's only one way to do it, and just go to college, kid, everything's going to be okay. And in my opinion, we've done a great disservice to our kids. Colleges are way behind. So I think high schools really have to take the lead on this. For me, it's about the decision making before you go into high school. So we're really trying to redesign at a granular level. It's actually a big research study where every one of our kids has an individual career plan. It's an iterative plan based on actual experience. It's kind of a takeoff on the Project Lead the Way research, where kids that go through the Project Lead the Way stick in schools of engineering at a much higher rate. Well, about 10 years ago, I asked our team, what if we tried to do that with every possible career a kid might want to go into? If the worst thing that happens is a kid goes and does an accounting internship, during their senior year and figures out, oh my God, I hate this. Good. Because who figures that out now? Kids that go to U of I and get an engineering degree and 3 months in one of the big firms in the city, and they go, oh my God, I signed up for 30 years of this. Well, what if you could solve for that in high school and really figure out what the kids are passionate about, and we really bias toward a livable wage. We use a suite of tools. We're the first in America, based on the software designers, to use this analytical tools. All three of them have the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, but one of them's got the Indeed platform. So we get jobs data every 24 hours. So we're really looking at return on investment, where the jobs are, where the demand is, where the growth is. And in a district that's got 2 of its 3 schools are non-majority schools, you want to change the world, you change the trajectory of a kid. Because if I can change the trajectory of a kid, especially a first-gen kid, I don't just change their life, I change their kid's life and maybe their grandkid's life. And that's really that's the thing to solve for in this country. It's the opportunity and the enrichment gap. We have such a divide in this country between the haves and the have-nots. And for me, that's my passion, is to try to fix that just by really trying to get a scalable model that people can follow. There's a lot of things in this world I can't fix, but what I can do is try to build, just a really awesome high school system that tries to get it right for every kid.
I have lived that actually. When you said internship, I went all the way through in radio broadcast and I did my internship. So spot on. I do remember in my fourth year, I was, yeah, one of those students. And I really appreciate that because I think we share a lot of the same look at how do we get students to just experiment and experience a lot of things before they go forward. Mindset change of previous generations and people looking at beyond the grade and beyond test scores is a difficult one. How do you work around some of those blockers and maybe some other blockers that you have seen in systems where we all think the number is the only thing that a student is?
Well, and that's such BS, and the research is really clear on that. It's axiomatic data. You take the millions of data sets of SAT and ACT. There's direct linear correlation between the scores and household income. You don't have to go up in very high increment bands. Like you can literally go up in $10,000 or $20,000 increment bands, and as we go up in those bands, the test scores rise in a linear fashion. So it's axiomatic that that's really telling us who's rich and who's poor. That's the problem to solve for. And you don't do that by more standardized testing. All that does is just reinforce the system. So one is you have to change the narrative. And you've got to really try to make school about skills and about dispositions and about experience. And what you're trying to do at the end of the day, if you can create a learner, someone that's got some skills, but especially the disposition and the confidence to know that they can solve problems and they can learn, I think you've done something really well. Because in this economy where, quantum computing is just it's rising exponentially, and so the knowledge of this of the world is rising exponentially. You've got to have folks who can continue to learn, and we're in the state's competency pilot. And I love that. We're doing integrated math. We've had more kids get in access successfully freshman math than we've ever had in the history of this district, even when we were mostly white and had 1 or 2% low income. And so I'm really proud of that. But that's in a standards-based framework and a competency framework. And what that is it's giving us the space to really reimagine how we create learning experiences. And math is the perfect, we started in math, the hardest place you can start. And we've had great success in math, which tells me if we can do it in math, we can do it anywhere. Learning ought to be like, studying judo. And if we study judo and the idea is, we're going to get a black belt. If I'm, my skill I'm testing on the Tayatoshi or the Hodaka Jime today, and, I don't master that or demonstrate mastery, well, you don't kick me out and tell me I'm a failure. We keep working on those skills until I can perfect them and use them, to standards. And then I keep progressing in my belt. Well, that's what competency really allows us to do, to reframe this idea of time. And instead, you can really personalize education more to the learner profile, which is everybody's different. And you can really open up the avenue to make learning about each kid's personal journey. And frankly, we've tried to do that with our adults about their own personal journey. And I've always thought from a design standpoint, you really want to mirror what you're trying to do with the kids, with the adults. That's the big mistake in education, is we focus just on the kids' design pathways. Well, if you don't have adult learners that have practiced cooperative learning, that have practiced differentiation, that have practiced blended learning, they're going to have a hard time rolling things like that out and executing them with students themselves. So we really try to integrate those things. But, the essence of your question is really, candidly, I don't pay attention to standardized testing. And I tell anybody that'll listen, and you probably heard me or retweeted me, it's a waste of time. Colleges know it. They know the dirty little secret. The colleges are the biggest hypocrites in the U.S. on this, because, they've used standardized testing to admit kids, while their own data has shown them, hey, we're just really disproportionately admitting the richest kids in America. So they've had to really account for that. And that's why you're seeing the trend in higher ed be test optional, because they know if they don't change that, they're going to keep advantaging the most advantaged kids. If you want to change the world, you got to change that. You can't keep advantaging the already most advantaged kids. You've got to really work at systems that change people's trajectory, and the people, especially that haven't had the same enrichment. And this is a neuroscience construct. I could do a podcast just on the connection between neuroscience and these test scores and enrichment and the economy. It's all kind of hard baked into one.
One of the biggest blockers that I run into a lot, and I kind of researched a little bit, you probably see this a lot, lawmakers. What are some things that you would like lawmakers to do statewide, countywide, United States-wide, worldwide, those blockers? What are some of the things that in a great world they would change?
Stop passing so many freaking laws. I was at a thing on Friday, and there were, just this year in Illinois, there are 100 new laws, which, I tweeted out about this, and Chad Watkins from ISA was talking to us at North Cook, and 100 new laws. I mean, think about that. Just to manifest and interpret and digest that. And that's just 1 year, and that happens every year. And a bunch of those laws have a bunch of unfunded mandates, and what ends up happening is just administratively you get pulled a mile wide instead of really having hyper focused. And we understand the politics of this. State reps that go down, they want to get a law passed that they've sponsored. I think there's this belief that gives them some cachet, and maybe it does. But the problem is that we're pawns in education to that. Most of the laws ever passed, they're well-meaning. Somewhat, someone's got a particular experience, and I'm not, obviously I believe in laws, and I believe in legislation, and I believe in the appropriate regulation that does try to help most people. I believe in that, but there's a lack of coherence in it, and often the people who are the subject matter experts, which in this case are the educators, are the last to get in the room. And Illinois has its own particular idiosyncrasies, in this, just because of the makeup of the state. Every state has its idiosyncrasies. But I think just, if anything, paring back some of the regulation, keeping the things that matter. I certainly we don't want to harm kids. We don't want to create schools that are harmful to kids or to staff. But I think we've over-regulated schools to the point that it's just so much just a process. I mean, think of 100 new laws in 1 year. And again, to each of the reps that sponsored those, each of those is well-meaning to them. But here in the field, and that's 100 this year, there'll be 100 next year. And it just gets to be too much. And if you track a couple people, here was the book in 1975, and then here it was in 2000, and now it's this big. And it's like, at some point, how about a new rule? How about every law we pass, we got to take 2 off? And if we do that for, a few years, maybe we'll make some progress that way.
Well, and then you throw a pandemic in there and it stretches the leaders even more. So what is next for you, for the Chicago Coaching Center, for Maine Township High School District 207? What's something that we can look for in the future? And then how can people connect with you and the district to learn more?
So we just rolled out level 3 coaching this year. Under the coaching center is led by the amazing Jill Geocaris. If you don't know Jill, if you're in the education space, she's someone you definitely want to know. What I love about Maine is that we've been able to have long-term goals. We're not changing goals every year. The path in the adult learning space is about making, if you isolate all the research and you isolate the variables that matter the most, well, the variable that matters the most that we have any control over is the quality of teacher in the classroom. So we are in pursuit. You never get to perfect. You never get to done with that. And so, I always take the long view on things, and we are just a few years away from having a district where the majority of our staff have only ever known coaching. Think about that. There's going to be a point in time when only every staff member has only ever been coached every year of their career. What's the potential of that, and how good can we be? And those are the questions we're asking. Those are questions I'm really proud of. Whenever I decide to step away from Maine, those are going to be questions that are baked into our system that'll never go away. Well, if you think about what you want to pursue in education, that is it. How good can you be? And can you create a condition and systems to be in pursuit of that and have a root system in your garden where it's got roots and it's owned and distributed among the staff? And that's what we've got. And it just gets better and better and better. The question about, the individual career planning, if we're not about changing the trajectory of kids' lives, what are we about? So that's an essential question. And we've built a system that again, we'll never get to perfect on that because we will never get it perfect for every single kid. But man, we're going to try. And we can get so much better every year. And we already do that. So in terms of what's in the future, it's continuing the really essential paths that we have. All of those, I mean, if you look at our systems thinking, everything's steeped in high impact instruction and equity and really trying to do well and be well for our students and all of the various lives. I mean, our kids speak 75 different languages in their homes. So we are privileged to have kids from virtually every corner of the globe in our district. That's a tremendous privilege and it's a tremendous responsibility that we don't take lightly. So I think we've got some hardwired designs in our system that you can continue to tweak and really sandbox. And that's the coolest thing about Maine, in my opinion. You asked what I bring to Maine, and what I brought to Maine, I can tell you we're radically different today than we were 17 years ago. We were a very traditional high school. We thought we had two jobs: get your kid through high school, get them enrolled in college, go have a good life. We did our job. Not nearly enough. And we weren't a good learning organization. We were a siloed organization. We had 3 different high schools, and if this was a glass of water in one, it had to be called something else in another. And so we've worked to move away from being a system of schools into a school system, which is how you get to be a learning community. And that's at its core. That's what education is about. Can you create the conditions where people reflect and have the humility to know I'm never going to figure all this out. So just be a learner. Lower the cost of failure. We want this to be a sandbox mentality. We really want to be analogous to what a teaching hospital is and just be in the pursuit of really, really great learning conditions. And that is being okay with failure, treat it as a learning condition. And man, I love what I do. I love what I do. And I'm so blessed and so privileged. We've got amazing kids, we've got amazing communities, we've got amazing staff, and I love the journey that we're on, and I'm super passionate about it. So I'm going to hang in there for a while and see how good we can be.
So you're very active on Twitter, Ken Wallace 207. Where else can people link up with you and or see what your school district's doing? Because I know I have a lot of listeners who are school leaders and parents who are just digging for some cool stuff and some innovators, which you are. How can people also connect?
So I'm on LinkedIn too. I'm more active on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram under KDubs207. That's KDUBS207. I don't post there quite as much, but then, go to maine207.org. All of our schools have Twitter feeds that are pretty active, Facebook. So a lot of our stuff is on there. We're in the midst of a $250 million renovation between all 3 high schools. So that's awesome to be able to have physical designs that match the learning designs that we've tried to implement in schools. And that's been an awesome thing. We could talk more about that, but if you really look at some of our videos, you'll get a sense of what's going on. There's some just physical space transformation going on in high school. So I'm super proud of that work too.
We should probably make our thing here a series because there is so many deep avenues we can go into with the coaching, the CTE, the physical spaces. And we'll let our listeners kind of dig into that and see what we can get. I'll ask a question on this podcast. Ken, you do not disappoint. You are an amazing individual who just is all about paying it forward. We're lucky to have you, and I'm very lucky to be in the same region of you as well here in the Chicagoland in the United States. Thank you so much for being here for our 200th episode. I really appreciate it.
All right, Peter, man, it's good to see you again, and you take care, and happy to join you anytime, brother.
Awesome, and thank you, listeners. We appreciate it. Here's to 200 more.